那是你得抓那个，你估计得这么多。我都要抓一些。
So now we have a test on the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. I don't understand very much of this. I don't understand this all very well. But what I do understand, I try to express to you or explain. So the basic meaning of this text is found in the beginning of Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, where it explains the persons of three capacities, where Lord Atisha states, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics. So here, Lord Atisha was referring to the pathways for beings of small capacity, the pathways for beings of medium capacity, and the pathways for beings of great capacity.
What do you think? And then Labas on the Tabilan, so don't get bumpy Tabatoje. What the Jibin and that Sanji Gumotoji, the Jibichimbi, what the Hija de Adan, Tajane Jibichongo Regenzo Marva.
So the teachings for beings of small capacity, or teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, are those pathways which lead to the higher realms. The teachings that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity are those pathways which lead to liberation, and they require a practice of the three highest higher trainings. And the teachings for beings of great capacity are those pathways which lead to complete Buddhahood.
London Sheshab Lange was one of the sentient Samal Vision, you are using the Digo Samarba, sentient Samalo, and Sanjik Rig Chabdu, sentient Samal Iji Shebate, Kasubure. Isheba the Jibatanji Tayo, and the Tanji Sheba, Chutanji Shea, and New York, so on the back. What the Iji Sheba the sentient Samal Yoris.
So one thing I forgot from before, so we're currently dealing with the pathways for beings of small capacity. That's the section that we're in, or shared in common with beings of small capacity. And all sentient beings possess the ability to achieve all three of these capacities, or aptitudes or scopes, because all sentient beings possess Buddha potential. And that Buddha potential is the mental consciousness that can be cleared away, or that can be cleansed of all of its misdeeds, and achieve the state of omniscience, where that mental consciousness has the ability to cognize all phenomenon. So all negativities can be abandoned. So therefore, the potential is there for all sentient beings to achieve all three of these capacities.
What that what the London Takasure. That German London, Japan, do that. Chukun, but the mission Zeva addition not Hajiro. The name Dangala Kubaji Chujishawa. Dembotation came to Wallace Chujishawa. What the London two is the London two, then Sanji cut on Tenjuka in Jerwa. 서로 가서 그래. 당하로 고바집 주지셔와. 안에 당하로 고바집 주지셔. 저완이는 줄은 시제다셔야지 뭐스. 저완이도 대비 근데 주든 얘기 간다서 내고를 시간 간다서 고르스 사지 송바지. 다 집어 담보고 좀 맞아 다트지 뭐 집어 들어와 집어들래. 라제서 신이 대비 주당 땐로 제다셔야 바니 나네 라제서 신이 대비 주 찾아러 와. 다드네 땐로 제다셔야 봐. 달라 대율때는 해블렘이 주고 내버 제달렘이 주니지 대율때는 해블렘이 주고 대화가 좋아다. 전치와서 뭐냐바 가서 마스 어떻게 찾으지로 다 해블렘 중고들라 그래서 그래. 나시 나자랑가 버제바다 해블렘 중고 사진이 말배 나치 나자랑가 버제바서들 답이지 집송을 나제 나도 소로 타진 되요레스 근데 집송주고는 TV 주센들라 하는 가서 사지 주지지는 시 차사로 와 단해블렘 중고도 어때 총각도 되니서
the Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment is a commentary on Lord Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. And this text begins, the great treatise begins with an outline of the content to come. So first it states that the first section will deal with the greatness of the teaching's author. And in this section there we find the liberation life story of Lord Atisha. So this is the first section. And the second section deals with the greatness of the teaching itself. And then it shows the four greatnesses of the teaching. It shows that it allows the student to see that all teachings are free of contradiction, and that all teachings are instructions to be practiced. It allows one to easily understand the conqueror's intent, as well as allowing one to immediately refrain from the great wrongdoing of abandoning Dharma. So these are the four greatnesses that Lama Tsongkhapa outlines about greatness of the Dharma, or of the teaching itself, greatness of the teaching. And then the next section deals with the great way to listen to and explain the instruction. So this is the proper way that the teacher should give the instruction, and then second, the proper way in which the student should receive the teaching. So how the student should conduct him or herself, and how the teacher should conduct him or herself. So that's the section on the great way to listen to and explain the teachings. And then the next section deals with how to lead students in the actual instructions. And that's the section that we're currently dealing with. And that begins with two categories. How to rely upon the teacher, that is the root of the path, and then the next category of what one does once he or she has relied upon the teacher, the stages in which one engages in after having relied upon the teacher. So then when we get into the second section, because we've dealt with the relying on the teacher that's the root of the path, the second section is what one does once he or she has relied, or the stages of how students train their minds after they have relied on the teacher. Then in there, we find two sections. We find an exhortation to take full advantage of the life of leisure and opportunity, and then the second section of how to take full advantage of the life of leisure and opportunity. In that first section, the exhortation to take full advantage of the life of leisure and opportunity, we find three sections: the identification of leisure and opportunity, contemplating the importance of leisure and opportunity, and the difficulty of obtaining leisure and opportunity. So that's under the exhortation section. And then the next section of how to take full advantage of the life of leisure and opportunity has two sections. Again, how to develop general knowledge of a certain how to develop certain knowledge of a general presentation, general presentation of the path, and then the actual way to take full advantage of life of leisure and opportunity. And then within the general presentation, we find how all scriptures are included within the teachings for beings of three capacities, or the paths of three types of persons, and then why students are led in these stages of three capacities. So the actual purpose of leading these students, and then the reason, the actual purpose and the purpose are divided into sections of purpose, reason, actual purpose. They all seem kind of like the same word, but there are different sections in this. So we've gone through that, so now we're dealing with the actual way to take advantage of life of leisure and opportunity, and that's the section that we're currently dealing with. And it begins, it's the section under persons of three capacities in the main text, but it's headed as the mindfulness of death section in this text. So it's around, we're going to be around the 140s section. I'll let everyone know exactly where we are when we begin. So that should be all the information.
What that Jeb Chung Kadu de la Regiment was ancient Kusul Tanjaruji.
Kochugogo.
Niba Nebula Zungola Son, Jeb Chung Tomoyu, Large Rembala Lojan, Dinta Tomo Large Rembala Lojan, Jeb Chimbi, Large Rembala Lojan, was such as
144 in the English. So the actual way to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity has three sections. Training the mind in the stage of the past shared with persons of small capacity, training the mind in the stage of the past shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity.
총무당 도모이 라지제 말 로장 와서 총무듯이 린당세야 린다 도모이 라지제 말 로장 와 집에 집에 라지제 말 로장 와서 어떤 송도 사제 송도
So these three categories contain all of the three capacities mentioned in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So where it says, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great, I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics. These are those characteristics, these are the identification of each of these capacities. Training the mind in the stage of the past shared with persons of small capacity, of course, deals with small capacity. Training the mind in the stage of the past shared with persons of medium capacity deals with persons of medium capacity. And training the mind in the stage of the path for persons of great capacity is a stage of the path here, the teachings for beings of great capacity. So this is the identification of each of those capacities mentioned in the beginning of the lamp.
다 중국도 도모 라지제 받들었는데 사제 송지용도 말이야. 가서 그래 사제 손대로 왔다 집에 중국 상바장 원고한다 대제비체 들러로도 가 사제 손지용도 집에 중국 상바장 원고 네 집에 중국 상바다 이제는 셔마 되는 로장한테 이제로부터 이제는 셔마 되는 로장한테 이제는 셔마디 더 tempo 되니들 다 간데 저와 셔마 던도 있다서 또 나냐고 상로 되는 바래 던도 하다 매 있다서 또 나냐고 네 상로들 로장 제야 되지로다 저 집이 중국대 나송 동el 가봐요 말에 나송 동el 나반 좋네 안 그런 데로 가려서나 하다 말지야 가봐요 알았어 하다 말지야 네 지대셔 뭐때 상바들 로장 제야 드레스 안에 하다 말지야 이나야 안에 도알 가봐요 도와 된지대 셔마디 더 때마스 다트 도와 중에 더도 거와래 디와래 거와래 도와 용거래 네 디발레 동에 용거래 어떻게 레도 이러다 제된 셔마 되네 jel로 제바다 제된 셔마디 더 때마스 다 제된 셔마디 더 때마 하도 말 제바 이나야 도알 가봐요 다디 주때 조카를 더 가르스 어떻게 제바 이나 아는 아주 가서 그래 건조송을 저선 주고는 뭐 주변 수치 주진 강도지도 소마톤 디발을 하다지야 돼. 집에 중국에 나인세도 어때 된도 그래서 말이야. 셔마디 더 템바스
Vinni. Okay, then Somdang Ewani Lagwa. Okay. So then the training the mind in the stage of the path shared with persons of small capacity. There's three divisions to that section. The actual training of the thought for a person of small capacity and the measure of the attitude of person of small capacity, and clearing up misconceptions concerning the attitude of a person of small capacity. And then the first section, the actual training of a thought for a person of small capacity, has two divisions: developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and relying on the means for achieving happiness in the next life. So the first section, under the section, the actual training of thought for a person of small capacity, we have these words, training of thought, and then in the first section under that category we find developing a state of mind. So that state of mind, that thought, refers to a mental state that wishes to abandon the suffering of the lower realms and is focused specifically on future lives. And in those future lives, wishing to abandon rebirth and the suffering, the rebirth in the lower realms, the suffering of the lower realms, and then wishes to achieve the happiness of the higher realms, happiness of the gods, the happiness of human beings. So here, the state of mind is a state of mind that wishes to achieve rebirth in the higher realms, and it says strives diligently for the sake of future lives. So it's focused specifically on future lives, and that the aim and the of that mental state is to achieve a higher realm rebirth. And the next section states relying on the means for achieving happiness in the next life. So this is the method to achieve the happiness relative to the training of thought for a person of small capacity. So here, happiness is rebirth in the higher realms. So in this context, the means for achieving happiness for a person of small capacity is achieving rebirth in the higher realms and abandoning the lower realms. So this person of small capacity does not like does not like the lower realms of the hell-hungry ghost animal, and likes the higher realms of the gods and humans and so forth. And here she recognizes that in dependence upon virtue, happiness is achieved, and in dependence upon non-virtue, suffering is achieved. So here she then modifies behavior or engages in behaviors that will lead to the happiness in the next life, which is higher realm rebirth in the context of small capacity. So how he or she does that is by relying on the means for achieving that happiness, the method. And here, method is referring to the practices of the person of small capacity, which are the pathways that are shared in common with beings of small capacities. Those practices of engaging in the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, going for refuge to the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and then acknowledging one's downfalls, confessing one's downfalls if one is engaged in negativity. So this is the method that one engages in. So first we develop a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, the state of mind that wishes to achieve higher realm rebirth and abandon lower realm rebirth for the sake of one's future life. And then the next section deals with the method for achieving that, how one goes about achieving that. And this is, again, under the actual training of the thought of person of small capacity, the first category under the training the mind and the stages of the path, shared with persons of small capacity.
Jiten shema tuyen yulo jeba tala sachi yaja nyi yungduwa. Jiten de rindu mene ba, chewa jesu tenba samba dans. Jiten de rindu mene ba, chewa jesu tenba samba wate sachi tambu che. Ta jiten shema chetan juyus, jiten ta chewa shema le tenen karso kore. Nduwa nyi ji dudu tenba, chewa shema de yoba ina, chewa shema chewa lensa tala dendu tangen nima tu yo maris. Nendul cheba ina dungen yungore, ane dendul chena dewa, wate nduwa nyi ji dudu samba wosa, dudu samba wote marbe. Ta tambo tsende rindu mene ba, chewa jesu tenba tala ta sachi jiti nduwa, chewa tenba ma gumbi nyemi, gumbi penye, chewa tenba gumbi luche tabushi cheba, chewa tenba gumbi sus sachi jiti nduwa marbe.
So section, the actual training of the thought, a person of small capacity, again, has two categories: developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives and relying on the means for achieving happiness in the next life. The first category, developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, has two parts. Mindfulness, and then the first part has two parts: mindfulness of death, and then contemplation that you will not remain long in this world. And then the second part is contemplating that what will occur in your future life, the happiness or suffering of two types of beings. So then those are the two categories, and it begins then with the first category that has two, the mindfulness of death and contemplation that one will not remain long in this world. And that has four parts: the faults of not cultivating mindfulness of death, the benefits of cultivating such cultivation, or the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death, the kind of mindfulness of death you should develop, and how to cultivate mindfulness of death. So these are the four categories under the first section.
and the London Shigumare, Jamal Shigumare, and Dunta Chili Shigumare, Dawachi no Shigum, Nashigumare Nabe, Tanzi, or the Tanzi Rabaji, Tanzi Tara to Sagi, Jane, Nashigumare Nabas on Tanzi to Yabaina, then do Landa, Tabi Landa, Sanjukumu to Landa to the Luno Jigmares, Tombatiroa. Tanyeba Dele, Nieba Teremdue, that then. Tazi Nashig Marin was only over Ina, then Java Shemet Yabumare, and the Karsure. Natabazi with Tanzi Tarale, near the Abumaris, Matabagumbi, Matabagum Tanzi Neburuva, Tanzi Rabat Chamo. What the Nashig Maris Tambaina, and Tazi Rabat they were Tamil Yabata, Tazi Tara Tegi, Yuetan. And Tanzi Tam the Rabak Nebu Maris, Matabu Mara, the Nebat. Sombat Terwata, Sombat there. And the Kated Nashiga Marina was on Lutanzi Tara to Yabaina, and then do Landa, Tabi Landa, Sanju Kubu Landa, Yale Jebaina, never Chibu Maris. She chose to Madu Yabumas. Nashig Marina was on the Yazan, Cindy is on the Macho de Robata. The neighbor Marba, Sumba or Sumba. Then unagated that never done the Dendu Landa, Tabi Landa, and Yale Jebaina, then she should Lelo Momus Lelo. That the ring of Yama Jema Gonandigre. Dawa Jemanya legend and Digger, Lojemanya legend, what the Shishun Dores, Lelu Yumores, Maria, Jebaje, Tangaba Tele, and Nashig Marina Betazi, Yubaina, then Diba Mago, Jutan, Tom Abangala, to the Shichabu Yumores, Shichabu, Jut the Shichabu Yubaina, and the Diba Mago to Dungan Jurua, and Dungan Shichabu Yumores, Nabaje. Truba the Nachak Marina Betanzi Yubaina, then Mago Jutan, Tama Banga, the Tatanya Subi, later Yomo Mamuyumuris, Mamuchumuris.
Napadan Drupa Chapagare.
Truba the Tat Yomo Nada, later Yomo Mamuchiris, Naba the shoot up chiggers, never chevo. Naba the
Drupa Mambo Sagare,
Mambo Sagare,
okay,
Yomo Chingures, what the
Mambo Sagare, okay. The Basu Chiji Jetson.
That they called the Jabon Dramarbe. Colin Jiden Swangada, Rani Jiden Shibume, that region to Kazani, Luna Kazonga Josuma, Jabon Dramarbe. Tatu Tanzi Tara to Yobaina. Tanzi Tara Yobaina, and then Yomo Sheshibu Yungore, Tanzi Tara Sheshibu Yungore, Deba Magoa Sheshibu Yungore, Trankamamu Yungores, Tanga Bambo Yoba Yena, and a Cocheda, Jidens on Onjuares, Sau Satin, Salasonla, the no Onjuares.
Okay.
And then Tanzi Taralas will let and Yumobatu, Saul Kanda Onjuresana, Saul Dene, Niwanta Yeda to the Rama Vashinuruda. Shigo Yezon, Saul Onjuares. Satin Dene Me Rama Vashinuare, Sheade, Leda Yumo Oxhinuares, Tanzi Lasu, the Suonki, Satin Onjuares. And then Sala. Shadu Rama Vashinuares, and the Sala Onju, Jidens Onju, and then Chida said, Leda Yumo, 2 Tani, some of it. Then Ma Natanzi, Tarate, Johnson, Madaba Magumi Yemi, and the tea coon the Jijab no drama. Two Tanzi Taraji, that the Leda Yumo, then the Kunju Pavi, the Abba and the Leju Kunju, the Yumo Kunju to sing some of it. Leda Nyamo Bukunju Onki, Nason Rama Vashinuare, Dendo Rama Vashinuare, what they is also Leda Nyamo Bukunju to Cheda, Cheda Jidens on Joa. Then Jidens on Onju, Leda Nyamo Bate, and the Susu Sabaremato, Kanza Jenda Jushu Sashus Lagamaris. Rani says Rani Sabaris, Deba Mago to Rani Sabaris. Running Savaris, Chichu Nibache, Jensu Chichu, the Divasajus Lakeo Maris, Chichu Sunde, Chedat again, Jidens on Onjuris, Conlan Jidens on Nas, Son Nonjos, what is a matter, Jijabat.
Okay, so in this first section, the mindfulness of death, that has 4 parts. It begins with the faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death. And in a different commentary, we find 6 points that are in this section about the faults of not cultivating mindfulness of death. And the first is that if one has this grasping at one's permanent self, if there's this grasping at this permanent self, and then there won't, and one doesn't contemplate mindfulness of death. So one doesn't cultivate this mindfulness. And one will begin to think, I won't die, or I'm not going to die this year, I won't die this week, I won't die this month. So one has this very coarse form of grasping at the permanence of self. So if one has this, then there won't be any kind of desire to engage in practices or look to pathways that will lead to higher realms, pathways which will lead to liberation, or pathways which will lead to complete Buddhahood, because there won't be this urgency, there won't be this sense that one will die, and there won't be a mindfulness of it. So there is this coarse and subtle impermanence, or permanence, coarse and subtle permanence, and coarse and subtle impermanence. So in this case, if one doesn't in any way contemplate this coarse or subtle impermanence of death, then one won't look to the practices of the paths. So this is the first point that's made of the downfall or the fault of not cultivating the mindfulness of death. The second is that if one doesn't have this awareness of death, then there won't be an antidote that's applied to the negativities. One won't apply any kind of antidote to suffering, because one will be so concerned with the things of this life, one won't be looking towards an antidote to future life suffering, because one won't be focusing on the potential of that future life. One will just be merely thinking of this life, that one won't die, etc. The next is that even if one does engage in the pathways or try to engage in practices of that lead to higher realms, liberation, or Buddhahood, they will not really have any power or potency, because they really won't be focused on the true goals. They would be just really concerned with things of this life. So therefore, not focusing on future lives, because of this, without having this awareness or mindfulness of death, they really won't be potent, the practices themselves. The next is that as a result of of this belief that one isn't going to die this month, this year, etc., one will become lazy. One won't feel as though any effort will be necessary. So laziness will occur. And then the next section, number 5, is that one will when one engages in the 10 non-virtuous activities or the 5 heinous or irreversible actions or the 5 hell deeds, they will be very potent. They will have a lot of potency or power when one engages in these negativities. And then number 6 is that one will accumulate large amounts of them. So one will accumulate large amounts of karma and affliction. So again, we have this grasping at permanent self that here is occurring when one isn't cultivating the mindfulness of death, and when one is accumulating large amounts of karma and afflictions. This is what is giving rise to future sufferings. And looking at the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering, and this is the superior truth of origin. Origin is referring to that which gives rise to the suffering, and karma and afflictions are that which gives rise to the experience of suffering. And as a result of not cultivating mindfulness of death, one will accumulate large amounts of karma and afflictions, and therefore experience their results, which are suffering. So there are the subtle forms of impermanence permanence and impermanence, and there are the coarse forms of impermanence and permanence. And it is the subtle form of impermanence that's the opponent to the subtle form of the grasping at the permanence, and it's the coarse form of impermanence that serves as the antidote or opponent to the coarse form of grasping at this permanent self. So in this case, if one doesn't cultivate this mindfulness of death, there won't be any focus on that. In Arya Deva's 400 verses, we find a quote that says, "What could be more dangerous than to sleep at ease while subject to the Lord of Death, ruler of the 3 worlds, himself without a master?" So here, when we spoke of the Lord of Death previously, we found that there's no external agent, there's no external person. Lord of Death here is referring to the karma and the afflictions. There's the coarse and subtle forms of those as well. And the 3 worlds here is referring to the low underworld, which is the underworld of the hell, hungry ghost, and animals, the above ground world, if you will, or on the ground world, which is referring to the human realm, and the above ground world, which is referring to the God's realm. So all of these 3 worlds are subject to the Lord of Death, and it isn't an external being. It's referring to the karma and the afflictions, because there is no being who can accumulate karma for us. No external being can accumulate afflictions or accumulate karma for us. We ourselves are alone the accumulators of this. And we don't have any independence relative to where we are going to be born. And this is the truth of suffering, this lack of independence that we have relative to our future life and our death. So it is our karma and afflictions that give rise to this death, not some external being that kills us or gives rise to this death, because there's nothing that can accumulate karma for us but ourselves. We are our own masters here. So it says, Lord of Death, ruler of the 3 worlds, himself without a master, meaning there is no external master. It's just the karma and afflictions that give rise to this experience of death. And the 6th point is that one will accumulate large amounts of them if one isn't cultivating the mindfulness of death. And I believe I got everything. If I missed anything, I apologize.
What the chart about my woman, Yemiti Khensur, Nijabal down, Nijaba. Kala Jitan Sunga da Rani Cheda Shipume, Yude Neji Niluna, Telemanu Chishu. That's on the Kala Jitan Sunga da Rani Cheda Shipumes, Chishu Sundan Cheda, Suluba Inaya, the Yobaina, and the Dratuma, the Goa Masabachi, those dead Vaina, and then Shugunia Kayungres. dunga yung se de marbe kala jiden songa sana sawu sati sala songa ngawa ju cheda de ane susu zubaramato susu nyomu susu julche bare leji deba ngage deba to susu sabares jenda gsa shebu jenda yomares rani cheda shebu me cheju sonde ke cheda de sujul yoba yinaya yue de nejini luna ane tele nyeka yowares tele maruba jenchi shwe wote tanzin la subi wote leda nyomo batu yue to nga so wote nyeba magumba yina ane jema dunga yongres.
So this stanza, the 400 verses, is speaking of the fact that if one does not apply an antidote to this, then there will be trouble. It says use the word dangerous. What could be more dangerous than to sleep, though at ease, while subject to the Lord of Death, ruler of the three worlds, himself without a master? So here again, subject to the Lord of Death being the karma and the afflictions. So sleeping is not applying an antidote. So here it says, then to sleep though at ease, to not apply, it's very dangerous to not apply an antidote while one has karma and afflictions. That rule in karma and afflictions rule the three worlds, the underworld, the above ground world, and the on the ground world and the above ground world, himself without a master. It is the individual, him or herself, that accumulates the karma, that engages in negativity through their body and speech and so forth. There is no external accumulator. It is only the individual that accumulates the negativities. So himself without a master. There is no accumulator other than oneself. So this is what this chu da jumbo garshani da jumbo lasun.
Da jumbo suge ni gawa masa ni digro ko deba yo maro deba meza an shugu nyaka ga yo maro.
Okay, so it's no problem if one is a foe destroyer. There's no danger if one is at ease, because a foe destroyer doesn't have karma and afflictions. But if one has those, then it's dangerous to sleep and be at ease, to not apply an antidote. So here this is speaking to those who have not destroyed the foe destroyer here, meaning the karma and the afflictions.
So
then again, we find another supporting stanza from the engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds by Shantideva about the downfalls of not being mindful of death.
Lulongje samaja ne jo shaman lugu ba susu mashi ba je an susu gabu ki dondal dibasa dai dondal dibasa ne an zada maza tonji shere dibana ba tasu shis wote shunju de dabun dabun je.
So here it says, I will have to depart, leaving everything, but not knowing this, I have committed various sins for the sake of friends and foes. So thinking that I'm not going to die, having this thought that I'm not going to die, there's no issue, one then accumulates a large amounts of negativities relative to things that one likes, so friends and then the opposite, dislikes, foes. So here I have committed various sins for the sake of friends and foes. This not knowing this referring to not being mindful of death.
What the shunju no jabani what the chomada temba magumbi nyemi magumbi kaza magumbi contre what the jabelon shunju.
So here, Aryadeva's 400 verses and Shantideva's Bodhichara Avatara, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, have stanzas that support the downfalls or the negativities of not cultivating mindfulness of death.
So in the
Lama Tsongkhapa's category, we find the faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death. You only have a couple of words. And it doesn't work as well in the English, but a couple of words, but it has great meaning within those couple of words. Faults of not cultivating mindfulness. So then the Becha got it, Basu Chiji Jetson. So the next section deals with the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death, and in the ornament to the Lamrim, the commentary, or I believe that's the name, but in a commentary on the Lamrim, we find 3 sections or 3 points that are made here.
tabi lang lojan chega mare sanji gumu lang lojan chega mare chawa daba gumba ina ane dendu lang lojan abu chegare ane tabi lang lojan abu chegare sanji gumu tubi lang lojan abu chegare tuanda chibu yungures tuanda chawas temarbe ane pansu ni tamba tishe nipa de pansu tangche go pansu soba tangche ta dendu ina ten pansu soba taba ina tabi langla pansu soba tangwa jaya yojirwata ane sanji gomon tubi langwa pansu soba tangje gores chawa mataba gomba ina pansu soba tangje yungore pansu soba tangje yong gores
go door
yeah wata chawa mataba gomba ina ane pansu soba kanga yungores
okay kanga okay
yeah
then somba
del lutu gabajindo lutu tani ba mataba gona te gona digres te mataba te mom gona chukayo maris what and lutu ju tobayo toba what kare mataba yaji meji gongores mataba gomba toda basun ke chores ane netugla rajagla teba chemi la ju toma mataba maguna ane yoayo mare toma ke chores bado ya 랑 줄 지타나야 마다바 마고네 요마레 마다바 공고레스 탄 데부 주비도서야 네 마다바 공고레스 토다 바송도 개치워레스 what bullshit 도바 가바스.
So in this section, the benefits of there are 3 benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death. There are 3 categories. First category is that it will allow one to have a good study of the 3 paths, the 3 pathways which lead, pathway which lead to the higher realms, the pathways which lead to liberation, and those pathways which lead to complete Buddhahood. So the first point that's made is it'll allow one to engage in good studies of these 3. The next deals with it being the door to all of the great qualities of the higher realms, the great qualities of liberation, the great qualities of complete Buddhahood. So this cultivation of mindfulness of death is the doorway into all of these great things, into these great qualities of these capacities. So this is the second point that is made. And then the third point is dispelling misconceptions, because there have to be, one has to cultivate an understanding of impermanence and dispel any misconceptions relative to that in order to proceed. So the benefit of cultivating this mindfulness is that it dispels misconceptions about impermanence and this grasping at things as being permanent. So it dispels that misconception. Gateway, okay.
Chenmo mai ba su gurbe lu bi da ba je ba ina nga she gare nya be ma da ba de sang lu ya ba ji je ba ina da pa na s pa ji ya ga do pa na de ri ran cho ta cho de ri che ga ma re sang ba ina na wo de dan jin re go ji ro ba wo da de ri she gare nya be ma da ba go be sang lu ta cho ba ji lu ji je ba ina ana tel phe mo mo yong go res de ri ran cho ta cho ba nas 다른 가셔그래 냐베 타주비 마다바 공부 상로 주여바 있나 추주고와 텐투 여바 연실라스 아나 추주고와 제베 중의 주 징기 주 제베 재미 주 텐투 여바 탄제라 되는 편집부터 용거스 되는 녀게 된다를 디바모 사고 말에 제라 소바다 조소 로바메바 토네스 다 다른 가셔그래 다 줘도 당 아시는데 되는 소소의 밤마다 안에 소소의 조보다 언제지야요 말보다 제야요 말 어디 상로 고용 그래서 안에 제라서 소소의 컴바다 몬타다 어디 가려요 봐이나 잘라간 가요 말보다 신도 소소 기분도 제마도 어디 고네 고용 그래서 다 제라서 바다 조선 조바메바 통네스 나 조보 비다바까지 이나 저와 샤말 조보냐도 되라고 말보다 조선 조바메바 통네 대달라 세바도진스 다다네 소수인이 밤마다 안에 조보라 소바도를 차바도 그랬어 차비 녀버 코마다바인 소소 단쟁이 녀버로 단쟁이 녀버로도 안에 도차데 칼리갈 두고 말이다 세바도진스 세바도진 동화라 소바다 가서 소소이 잘라더니 이나 심바 동화다 처범비야라 소바 어떤게 저와 셔만 루야가 tradition 그래서 소소이 잘라더니 여바이나 처범비야다 그 같은 사바이나 안달라더니 도안 중고 여바도 셰도 여바이나 어디 제용 그래서 다 텐트 여바 텐질라 동화라 소비 고네 헤블랜드 페이지 헤블랜드 페이지라 나긴 좀 왔다라스 헤블랜드데 마다바 공 마쳐와들 것때 대용 그래서 대용 소도 된다 쳐 그래서 된도 용 그래 드루바이나 네 된도 용 그래 타바 용 그래 상제 고공 용 그래서 안 된다 쳐 용 그래서 어디 손대 서베 좀 왔다를 냐고르다 잡아라 소바 디데지 추지 실 메바탄지 빈바 샤와다를 해보 매바다 로티지 내수 통네 녀쉐를 도진教授中华党最近老苏比郎中不能大中国大都鬼把的大都党大都搞了一下大都党你什么了대구 면도 대구 다도 대구 그바시바 전주지 소바시비 르라 소비 헤버 매바는 헤버 담바 라네 고봉 담바 라니 지제데 고봉 담바 라니 지제데 로아나 짱 드치베나 텔레 튼초와 지시스 된다 쳐버레스 어디 손대 서베 다등아니 갈레갈레 주는 말이야.
So the second section, the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death. When those who have little understanding of the teaching conclude that they will die today or tomorrow, they see that friends and material possessions will not accompany them, and so they stop craving them. So here, this is under that first category that I don't believe I named it before. It's the great importance. Finding great importance is the literal dunchewa. Great importance or great meaning, finding great meaning, and that was the category that was called the good study. Good study of the three paths will occur, finding great meaning. So that's great meaning is the name of this first section. It says so they stop craving them. So once one, even those who have very little understanding of the Dharma or religion have very little understanding. Once they conclude. Or have an understanding that they will die today or tomorrow. So they have this awareness that death is ever present, if you will. Once they have this, they stop craving their friends and stop craving relatives and so forth, and parents and so forth, because they recognize that when death comes, they cannot accompany. One cannot be accompanied by one's friends or relatives and so forth. And also material possessions, one's car, one's house, all of the things that one desires cannot be brought to death with one when one dies. So all of these things are not useful at the time of death. So when there's a recognition of death and the awareness of death, and this craving for these things stops. It says naturally they then wish to take full advantage of their human birth through virtuous deeds such as giving gifts. So by recognizing that because one is going to die, by engaging in virtue, this will lead to happiness, it will lead to the higher realms, will lead to liberation, will lead to complete Buddhahood, and generosity being a virtue, and recognizing that one's material things are not worthwhile because they can't be brought with them, then one begins to engage in religious activities such as giving away of these possessions which they once craved. They take full advantage, such as giving gifts. Just so, if you create an authentic mindfulness of death, you will see that the toiling for worldly things such as goods, respect, and fame is a fruitless as winnowing chaff and a source of deception. You will turn away from wrongdoing. I think we went this much further. With constant and respectful effort, you will continue good karma by doing virtuous deeds as going for refuge. I'm going to read the whole thing. Maintaining ethical discipline. You will thereby bring lasting significance to things like the body that will not have such significance. You will ascend to a sublime state, will lead others there as well. What could be more meaningful? So there's that word meaningful. So that's how the section is titled Great Meaning. The last word is meaningful. So what is meaning of meaningful, making it meaningful, is by studying those three capacities. So I apologize. I'm just trying to connect the last, what was last translated, and any words that I might have missed that were significant from from the standpoint of the etymology and so forth. Thank you. Ngay de kanga loson. Yene de puke kaba khas. Okay. Chu kabiyare de puke.
de tagare.
Ja. Ja. Ula.
Tenma ngulma.
Getsilo.
Puna seate. Niba gumi penero.
De rasne.
What then digure. Gumi penero what the chwa chishu de bature.
Okay. So
anga del de jaju chen mara. 야자 찔러셔나 구수 야자 합은 게 되지.
네 레레레.
다 근데 처음 마다 공부 있나 된다 싶으시라 용거레스. 마다 공부 있나 안에 된다 된 처와래. 된다 싶어 간다 용거스나 데리랑 처와 타 줘봐나스. 데리가 셔그리냐베 마다바 때문에 상루데 아버지바 있나?
그래서
최주고와 된된여바 장제를 제비 종의주 링기주 제비 준비주를 고안의 때여바 있나? 안에 와더술래 tentu yoba yen chila tene ane susu nye la chabi chaba tang kondo tang wata su du nukare ze la chabi chaba du nukare ane tu la chabi chaba la suba le tang nyomo ba du nukare susu tene shedu le ane susu nye nyandu doya yo ma re susu shendu du ze jala mota la suba nyandu khan doya yo ma re susu shendu du ane susu drobo hama tang drobo gangalo treya yo ma re 제가 매버데 시고요 하르스 통네 대달라드는 세바도 너차 지금 말했어 세바도지 맞아 안에 제라서부터 그 지바동 알아서도 거네 안에 헤블랜드 안에 마다바 내마 집이 강사 폐지할 때 용거래서 나긴 좀 왔다르스 네 녀고다 다 소소를 녀바다 고대 네 녀고서 그러다 다 녀바지 비야는 여바 당전에 수수 샤시시간에 못서래 차바제가 말했어. 당년달 잡아래 안에 차바제가 말서 그러더라. 녀고 녀다 녀고 잡아라서 반지된지 추지실 매바탕지 지된 천대 체도 매바탕지에는 아주 빈바서나 토게 ngaso raisi ke lenta du ku somane jila de ro ol pimba lo memba de de ne yin lo ne da nya ba ta re zang xin nya ga jila na ge lo dan da chun de san ne ji den xiao gu pimba xiao jin du ju na wo de da bu de pimba xiao na ro len sa du de soma ji de la ro pimba lo memba
the long cover
na ni de ro na ni de
ya just so long
de de yin lo le la 다와 된체와 이진도 몰라 대대는 이진도 레라 너다냐마 다레 장신 녀가 지라 나길로던 춘데 산네 사바이나 지대가 샤와근 걸로 비바 샤와나 돈도 그래서 어디 좀 말해
So all right, okay. When those who have, so we're going to go through this now line by line, this section, in a little more detail. We first had an overview, now we're going to look at this detail in detail. When those who have a little understanding of teachings conclude that they will die today or tomorrow, they see that friends and material possessions will not accompany them, so they stop craving them. So once there is a once one, even with little understanding, concludes that he or she is going to die, whether it's today, tomorrow, that there is a certainty of death, then there is a different relationship that one has mentally with one's things, material possessions, as well as one's friends and enemies and so forth. One's attachment to one's friends and material things such as one's car and so forth are eliminated. One's hatred towards one's enemies and so forth, these things are eliminated. And the reason is one recognizes that once one dies, none of these things can carry forward with them, can be carried with him or her to the next life. At the time of death, friends cannot be brought to the next life. Our material possessions cannot be brought. Enemies that we hate cannot be brought. So then there is a decrease in this attachment and unrealistic relationship that we have with things and people. So then the reason this section is called the Great Meaning is that one, then as a result of this awareness of death, will then want to engage in the small scope Dharma, the medium scope Dharma, the great scope Dharma, as a result of this meditation on impermanence. Because this is what we're speaking of here. This when one has even a little understanding of the teaching, concludes that they will die today, tomorrow. Conclusion is through familiarization. So here this word conclude is a result of meditation or familiarization. So once there is this familiarization with this idea, this impermanence of death, then one will go towards this small scope Dharma and great scope, medium and great scope Dharma. And then with this reality, once one recognizes the reality of death, then the attachment and hatred that one has, attachment to friends and possessions and so forth, and hatred towards enemies and so forth, dissipates because that they cannot be brought to the future life after death. They have no help or aid at that time. So that one's cars, one's parents, one's friends, all these attachments dissipate. And it says naturally they then wish to take full advantage of their human rebirth through virtuous deeds such as giving gifts. So then there is a desire to engage in the virtuous, engage in the giving of things, because the things that one has cannot be carried forward to the next life, so they become meaningless, they become less important, and the importance is placed on things that are meaningful. And in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Duden, there's a stanza that speaks to this. It says, "The working basis of a human form endowed with liberties is superior to a wish-granting gem. Moreover, such is only obtained this very one time. Difficult to acquire and easily lost, it passes in a flash like lightning in the sky. Considering how easily this can happen at any time, and realizing that all worldly activities are as immaterial as chaff, you must try to take advantage of its essential significance at all times, day and night. I, the yogi, have practiced in this same way." So this stanza in the abbreviated stages of the path, the Lamrim Duden, is speaking to exactly what this section, the great importance, the point called great importance, is dealing with. So recognizing the understanding the and having an awareness of the service of that, and then as a result of it, engaging in practice and becoming less attached. So I think that's everything. If you create an authentic mindfulness of death, you will see that all toiling for worldly things such as goods, respect, and fame is fruitless as winnowing chaff, and is a source of deception. Okay. Sublime state. So now we get into the actual practice of small capacity that then comes about as a result of this awareness of death. So we're going to get into the section that starts to analyze the practices of that person of small capacity. So it says, where was I? Okay, then you will turn away from wrongdoing. So it's beginning to speak of the ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities. So this is the turning away from wrongdoing is engaging in ethical behavior. So I'm going to read it first and then I'll go over it. Then you will turn away from wrongdoing. With constant and respectful effort, you will accumulate good karma by doing such virtuous deeds as going for refuge and maintaining ethical discipline. So here, when we look at the teachings shared in pathways in common with beings of small capacity, those pathways which lead to the higher realms, we find the practices of ethics, which is an abandonment of the 10 non-virtuous activities, going for refuge to the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and acknowledging one's downfall. So here we find the Lama Tsongkhapa getting into those practices where he's saying constant effort, so respectful effort here is referring to delighting in doing good. So this kind of effort is enjoying a joyous effort. Finding joy in doing the effort. So the word effort also has joy within it, as Rinpoche was saying. So this joyous effort. So one will find joy in doing the effort to accumulate good karma, doing virtuous deeds, and going for refuge and maintaining ethical discipline. So that contains those teachings for the person of small capacity. And it says you will thereby bring lasting significance to things like the body that would not have had such significance. So the body becomes a vessel that allows one to engage in these practices. And then it says, you will ascend to a sublime state which will lead others there as well. What could be more meaningful? So there's that word meaningful, great meaning. Greatest meaning. And here, one will ascend to a sublime state. We could be speaking of higher realms of the gods and humans, and then all of the other higher states beyond that, because it says will lead others there as well. So the sublime states, beginning with the states of the higher realms, and then liberation and Buddhahood. So that's Guru Rinpoche.
Get to the elephant, yeah.
We're in the meaningful, the last section.
What that Matabagongi no Dondachibushidades, Dondachibushidade, Matabas only a Kentucky, Nason Gabajone, Nason Dungan Gabajone, and the Conjunction of Johnson Dore, Mokijo Sutin Country to Son, Debalisha, what the Nation, and the Susu Dundu Jumo Dore, Jenda Dundul Chivaris, and the Shada Dondachivaris.
Oh, okay.
20 years.
So meditating on impermanence has great importance, or is very meaningful, because by meditating upon this impermanence, impermanence of death, one will wish to abandon or renounce the lower realms of suffering, the lower realms of cyclic existence, and then as a result engage in the practices which will allow one to abandon those experiences and achieve rebirth in the higher realms of the gods and humans and so forth. So as a result of meditation on permanence, one renounces the lower realms, or wishes to definitely emerge from the lower realms, and engages in the practices of going for refuge to the three jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, engages in ethical behavior which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and then acknowledges one's downfall or negativity if he or she has engaged in it. And here it says, you will ascend to a sublime state and lead others there as well. If I mistranslated it before, I apologize. And this time when we're speaking of sublime state, we're speaking of the higher realms of cyclic existence and leading others to the higher realms of cyclic existence. So if I added anything previously, I apologize. I don't believe I did, but in this instance, it's slightly different, specific to the higher realms of cyclic existence.
What the Chibu Chung Land Lord Yana Jigin, Dona Chibu Shida, Dona Chibu Yinzan, T-shirt, put to make this, T-shirt, put to make because Marba, T-shirt, put to make this. That Yangal de Vision to Yindo, Yangal de
Lesso.
Tajaba, the Shuju to the Tenju Kunova, Tangazu, one Tiber Tangazu, the Luna Jet on the Abro.
Lesso.
Tama de Jaba, Shuju, the Tenju Kunova, Tanyangal de Vision to Yindo.
Conjure. So now it says, will lead others there. What could be more meaningful? Okay, so now we've expressed that there's great importance or great meaning. What's the reason? So here it says, for this reason, the scriptures use many examples to praise the mindfulness of death. As the final Nirvana Sutra says. So we've already quoted Aryadeva's 400 verses and Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, or engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds. So these are works that we find in the Tengjer. the authentic Indian commentaries section when we're looking at the Kangjur and Tanjur. And now we find a quote from the Great Final Nirvana Sutra. And this would be a text that would be found in the Kangjur section, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha. So we have 2 quotes from the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, and then 1 quote now from the actual pronouncements of Lord Buddha. So we can see these texts in this text. These texts in this text.
What the Yangan Deva goes on the Tip Chungulan, so Yalan Jenda, what the Tip Chungulan Tibina, and Dunda Chibaris, Bumbusundus, Yabushidatis.
So now there'll be many examples that are going to be, reasons that are given, or examples.
But to mention Hate, Yangan Deva Chembole, Shimo, Tanjinane, Tunjilu, Chugosa, Shimo was an Azupio Marbe. Pure Nazuba in that and Yatan Languto to Shimo Grama, Trisha Marva. That is not Arul, that's in Katu Trisha Marva, Trisha Mogua.
John Deere.
Trisha, what did she to Lujo at the 30 Ashuris, fall season,
yeah,
winter season, and then fall season, the
fall Yakshu.
Paul Ashuris, Paul Zamo, Zagan Ulja, Jematon to Abachimuris. What is the matter? Then I and Dushik on the Yashu, the Matabin Dushitris, the Jim doesn't do a baby dembo, don't let them be Nabaje, Kunju, them be Nabaje, Godin Nabaje, Landing Nabaje, the Jim of the Judu Marbe.
That's so.
Judu and on the Sanjik Tambute, Matabat on what is Matabin Dushit Yashuris, Chimo Tanjin and Tunjulu Chure, and then Matabin Dushik. Dushi Nane, Dushi Nane Chu, Matabin Dushi,
That's so.
Chugosa. J. Tanjin and Balangiji, J. Tanjin and Balangiji, Balansan as Lanchin, Elbenbe, Lanchin, and the Kiwa, Dublin in the Kiwa, and Lanchin with the Santa Ketul Meiji Boris. Balansa, the Lanchin are the Santa Ketul me, Kedu Chibameno.
NGK, the Aleph Lampoche.
Lampoche. Jane on Chujuba Lampoche, Jere, Dushin on Chuju, Matabin Dushis, the Bomb.
Then the Rinpoche, the fall, the Yakshu. The
Pure.
The Shintu, the Yaka Yakshu Yomare. The Garishene the fall. Gangisene the Gonka Gemma, then
Gunka Yashida Yomarova. Don't call that some of you, don't do one ten the sum of Ladro, Santus Yashabaina, Sate Wold, then Lujiman Ruto.
Then Yakala Yondu. The fall.
Yakala Shinka Lojava in the Yakashinka no Luton 2 years. Don't do lower than the Tunkajena, don't do the Basarva, don't do Lands at the Tamoro, and Santos Luna, Lojema do have children.
Oh, Lojema, Ale. Okay. So, autumn is fall, correct? All right, I'm just making sure. Then why isn't spring the best time to plant? That's all I was asking. Among all reapings, the autumn harvest is supreme. Among all tracks, the track of the elephant is supreme. Among all ideas, the idea of impermanence and death is supreme because with it you eliminate all attachment, ignorance, and pride of the 3 realms. So here there's examples that are given. And the track of the elephant among all tracks. So in the previous days, Rinpoche was saying there weren't machines like we have in the United States. Like there weren't tractors, machines to work on the fields with. They worked the fields with yaks and elephants and so forth. So Rinpoche was saying in Sanskrit, the word for like a cow and an elephant is very similar. So I was saying in English they've translated it as elephant, and he said that's the best use of it because the elephant's track is the largest track. So that's the best translation of it. And so the autumn harvest is supreme. This is the supreme harvest. So it's saying among harvests, the autumn harvest is the best. Among topics, the idea of impermanence is the best, because it's the beginning of what Buddha taught. It's the first thing that was taught. In looking at the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, the truth of origin, the truth of cessation, and the truth of path, there are each of those truths has 4 attributes, making for a total of 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths. And the first attribute of the truth of suffering is impermanence. This is the first division of the first topic taught by Lord Buddha. So the impermanence was the first thing that was taught in the truth of suffering. So it's the first of the 4 attributes of the truth of suffering. So there are 4 of each, making a total of 16 attributes. So here it's saying that among all the ideas, the idea of impermanence and death is supreme because with it you eliminate attachment, ignorance, pride, and pride of the 3 realms. So this is the beginning of the end of all of these negativities, and therefore it is the supreme of all the ideas. As an elephant's footprint is the biggest of all footprints, the thought of impermanence of death is the biggest of all thoughts, if you will, or the most massive or most important of all thoughts.
So if we're
looking at the bests of things, the best time for harvest is autumn. The best or best track or print of an animal is an elephant. The supreme, or you could use best, supreme, and the best of all ideas is the idea of impermanence of death.
Cheda Chishu Sonden, Visit Tanzin also to sing some of it. Nashika Marina with Tanzin, Tamata Raba. What the Suge and then South Satins will on Juris, Susu Saparis, Shakin Jenio Maris, the Vision, those ladies in some of it.
Chu the Dazin, the Lana, the Dazin, Dapa Zimba, Kagi,
Tapa Zimba. Nashik Mariana Tanzino, Tanziraba Marba.
Dazin.
Not the English, Gumaris.
Okay.
Tanzin, Tanziraba.
Dapa Zimba, the Dagare. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to check because there's Da, which is self, and Tapa, which is permanent. And if you shorten Tapa, it's Da. So it sounds like it could be self or permanent. So I just want to make sure I'm translating this properly. Grasping at the permanent, it is grasping at permanent self, but it's grasping at permanence. So I just want to make sure I'm using the correct translations, even though everyone knows what we're speaking of. This idea that one will not die. There are, this is this grasping at this permanence of self, this grasping at permanence. And there is a subtle and coarse form of this grasping. So this idea that one will not die is what we're speaking of as being a negativity. And the opposite is the recognition of impermanence of death. So there is this coarse and subtle mistaken grasping.
Shiva Debar Marba, Chivasana, Shijimba, Chiva. What the Mataba Rabat in Samarba? Mataba dances the busy Tamat Manua, Mataba Tamo. Gaji Bane Yus and Jilla should be Dujubas. And then Nasu Chibi Dusun and Nasu Mataba drew yours. Gajin Baris. You are the Gajin Baris. What the Gajin but the Mataba Tamo, what the Gajin but the Yagumanua. Jijimban the Yus Jilla should be Duju. Jijimban Jilla should be your missions. Jijimbas. Jijimbas and a Jew doesn't live with Jijimbares. Jew doesn't live with your mother. Juden Debut Jew to Jijin Bare, Jew to me. And then Matabate Radusu Gajin Bares, Yuris. Gajin Ban the Yujang, Jilla Shubin de Jubas. Gajin but the Gajin with yours. Nangaji with so, not on Jidun and Gajin Bares Romarbe. Gajimba, Gabalongo to Juba. Gajin Ban the Yujang, Jilla Shubin de Juba. Mataba Tam Pijavamuja Mendoza.
So we're speaking of the coarse and subtle impermanence. The coarse impermanence is the actual ending of death itself, and the subtle impermanence is the momentary disintegration upon arisal of each moment in disintegration. So the Geshe, I'm missing something though.
Chewasana Gajimba said the Marvan Gajimba. Chewa. Chewasana.
Chewa. Shiwa, Chewa.
Dayin, dead. Dayin is not
Shiwa.
Chewa the Marva. Chewa the little Chewas and do what the Dayin go. Dayin.
So again, we're back to the ideas of dying being the subtle impermanence and death being the coarse impermanence. So this dying, this momentary, this disintegration upon arisal. So the Shiwa, the
Chewas are not dead. Dobro.
So the dying and death. So Rapa,
Rapa the
Tramo, Mitapa Tramo.
Mataba Trama the Tangajin was. That's not you be do so. Not to Gajin Baris. Gabalongo to Shubaris. Or the Mata Trama to yours, said the Marva. Jula Raji Chenrezig, Manaman Devon, dances, or the gay, Judeland, but the Kadu Trouba Tuso, Mataba drew the yours, Mataba Hell drew, Joko and Debut and Hell drew, Mataba Shugu to the Mares. Couldn't Chebatan Lanson, Mataba drew the yours.
So the moment of an arisal begins the impermanence. The moment of the arisal of something begins its momentary disintegration, begins its impermanence. So the moment of an arisal begins its impermanence. So this is the subtle impermanence. I apologize if I'm... So there's Rinpoche's quoting Dharmakirti's Tsema Namdro, where it's speaking of the cause of a result arising and not having the result present within it already. And then it arising and ending. But I apologize, I don't have the quote or in all of the connecting material in this particular case. I know I've left something out, and I apologize. Not a lot, it's just I've left something out.
Yeah. What that Chenmo Taji on the Jungle Chure, Jet Taji on the Balang Jet Chure, but the Jinto, Duche Taji Nane. Mataba na chin du jit chures mataba sanlu ta chin du jit leba ina nga shegre nya ba sanlu de ba ina ta de jeb chungu chu lu na jegre tin chu lu na jegre jeb chibi chu lu na jegre ne ka so gre
the tanche chongo din dan chembo
de su insaro.
So here, among all the autumn harvest, so it's speaking of things that are supreme. The autumn harvest is supreme, the elephant track is supreme, and the idea of impermanence and death is supreme, because from it one engages in the practices of the small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity. It says you eliminate all attachment, ignorance, and pride of the three realms. So this is why impermanence and death is supreme among all ideas.
다 뉴시는 마다비 뉴시는 치 뉴시도 야부여바 있나 코니에버 야부여레스 그 가를 내버 그래서나 데다기네 칸송진 되바탄스 칸송진 되발레 되바선 되살고 거는 거지래 칸송진 되발 되살 내버 그래 마리발 내버 그래 나제는 나젤 내버 그래서 단지 셀로스 what does it matter?
So it eliminates attachment, it eliminates ignorance, it eliminates the pride of the three realms, the pride that one has, the ignorance that one has in the three realms of cyclic existence. So it's an eliminator of these, and that's why it is supreme among ideas. So the three realms are referred to the desire realm, form realm, and formless realm.
Council Dobas and a council of Chabin Doba. Dochachi, Maripache, and Naje and Naje. Naje Tanji Celos, the Neb, Docha Nebundur, Docha Segre, Maribal Nebundur, Maribal Segre, and Naje Segres, what is one days.
So here it's saying the idea of the impermanence of death is an antidote and eliminates pride, ignorance, and attachment found in the three realms that beings have in the three realms.
And Nyomoba the Jendal Mobile Nebudu, the Jindo, Nyomoba Tanza. That's a new thing in Mobile, Nyomobatan, Nyomobatan, Nebarshuba, Tanji, John Utuata Boresa. Nyomoba Nebudu, Nyomobi should the Legidiba, Margitiba, Egidiba to attend John Bituana Marbe.
So, hammer. Yeah. Similarly, it is praised for being the hammer that destroys all afflictions and wrongdoing, for being the gateway into the instantaneous achievement of all virtue and goodness, and so on. So here it's being compared to a hammer that smashes. It says that instantly destroys all afflictions and wrongdoings.
That Chindushi, not chicken yabe and Mandaba to San Dabaina, Tedaki Council in Debale, nearby under, never do reverse, Rova.
So then we
Council
ask,
Chabal never do other. Maribal never do river, Takunanina Maribata, Lendela Mariba, then you can do Maris. What the Tubazo in the Moju.
So now we look at this, we have to debate it. We have to analyze it through debate, and there's many debates that go on about this. Because here it says, among all ideas, the idea of impermanence and death is supreme because with it you eliminate all attachment, ignorance, and pride of the three realms. So the question is how does the impermanence and death eliminate the ignorance of relative to reality, the nature of reality? So how does it eliminate that? So there's two kinds of ignorance of karma and its results, ignorance of the nature of reality. So if one starts to debate, then one would debate and say, how does impermanence, the idea of impermanence and death, eliminate the ignorance relative to the nature of reality? So then there's a lot of debate that can take place just within this one verse when we're looking at the ideas presented within it.
Maribal, Lendela Maribal, Niabun, Virgin Dugu is
there.
Chasan the Kanshi. And Takonanila Mariba Tenzin to Sumarba, Tenzin Yabando, Matabakon, Tenzin Anem, what the two was on.
So then doubts arise. Okay, so we're looking at the different things that are stated. You eliminate all attachment. So attachment is it's a viable option to eliminate attachment by the idea of impermanence and death. And then ignorance, possibly able to eliminate the ignorance relative to karma and its results as a result of this, but not on the ignorance relative to the nature of reality, which is the grasping at true establishment. So it won't serve as an opponent to that. So there's debate then that can take place within this statement. There's a debate. This is debatable, basically. Doubts arise when these blanket statements are made.
What that Madaba Chi Dushi Madaba Nashiri Madaba San Dadaki, Consul the Chata Zule, Niapo Maruna Seto Maro, Maribal Maruna Mariba Seto Mare, Najel Gaje Seto Mare, on Niapo Rosan Seguja, the Bata Maribata, Naje Tanji Celos. She was what that in the what in the sun dance on Montando. So what you do what the
So it's important to think, there's so much to think about in this, and this is why we utilize debate to be able to actually analyze these, to think about these. Because if no opponent, it says impermanence is, this idea of impermanence as death is supreme because you eliminate attachment, ignorance, and pride. If an opponent or an antidote isn't applied, you cannot eliminate these things. So there is an opponent that must be applied. So we have to identify the specific opponent and then that's where the debate comes into place about the specific opponents to the specific mistaken views, if you will.
ngajel dinya budu ngaje shechewa ina mataba kongu se tadare ndo ta ngaje shechewa dosha shechewa ina mudu kongu res ane kondu shechewa ina shamba mara ane tomo shechewa tende ngaje shechewa ina mataba kongu se tadare ndo.
So here it says pride. So the antidote to pride is meditation on impermanence. So we can say that that's correct. So when we backtrack, what is the antidote to attachment? Meditation upon ugliness is the antidote to attachment, or impurity, if you will, or ugliness literally. Then the second, hatred or aversion. Meditation upon love becomes the opponent to hatred or aversion. And then looking at delusion or ignorance, meditation upon dependent origination becomes the antidote or opponent to delusion. So we have to look specifically at the opponents to specific negativities and how they are eliminated. And this is where analysis, again, and debate come into become useful.
Chi ndushi mataba to san tamba ina tejin to nyomo pal nyeba ndore nyeba shoba tanje chi cha tu jombe towa na kure marba nyomo ba sa ta nyo to ta nyo sho tu yirwa nyomo ba dans nyo shoba sana loji de ba tanga ge de ba tu marba o ta tanje jombe towa na kure ta no ko jun no ta.
So it's similar. So here it's saying it's praise for being the hammer that destroys the afflictions and wrongdoing. So it's a hammer that smashes the afflictions. Afflictions here referring to the 6 root afflictions and the 20 secondary afflictions. Wrongdoing, speaking of misdeeds that one engages in through one's body and speech, actions one physically engages in through one's body and speech. So here it's saying that this meditation upon impermanence and death is the hammer that smashes away all of these afflictions and wrongdoing.
Oh, then I gele tanje chicha dunjoyu. Gele tanje chicha drobala jobi gochembo jobala sobi jang nga so sa. Gele tanje chicha dunjo. Ta nga so gele chebi chungu chu ndingi chu chebi chebi chu goto samalo ne goshi shabana bres mataba san tang shabana goshi suna an chebi chungu chu yongre ndingi chu yongre chebi chu goten pojadin samarba.
It says for being the gateway into the instantaneous achievement of all virtue and goodness and so on. So here virtue and goodness, speaking of the Dharma of small, medium, and great capacity. So these 3 Dharmas, small, medium, and great. The meditation upon impermanence and death is the doorway into the achievement, or the gateway, the entrance into the achievement of these things, of the dharmas of small, medium, and great.
What the Nyangal do no him, but do know the Haju Mobi waters. That's only John Swan de Pichento Mandua. Sonly John learned the Zanan Dawa. Do Shashin, the Jinchu na Hejo Dashine, Dujim Matu Tune, the Juba, Cheda Jabu, Dayam Mabandros, Cheda Jabu, Dayam Mabandro, Shedansa. I tell them that I should go to Tongo. Tanga so lewd the Matabares, Sagas commanders.
Yeah.
Sign to Zushabi, Belletti, Tangalassit in Damar. Belletti, Lansan Chan, whatever.
Sapozun and trouble.
Some of the Sals and Lansan Gainer, then I'm not too lewd with the Dabres.
Understanding that the body is like a clay vessel, and similarly that phenomena are like mirages. Here you destroy the demon's poisonous flower-tipped weapons and pass beyond the sight of the Lord of Death. So here it's saying the body's like a clay vessel. It's easily destroyed. Rinpoche is saying clay is heated and then dropped and smashes. It is no longer it's not strong. it's perishable, if you will, easily perishable. So the body is like this a clay vessel. So this is the meaning of that line.
That the chuna mejun da shenes duji mutu chune the jubasa. Mejus na what is it? Mejus rova.
Nilam.
Nanga do shemata shemaro.
Okay. That's a mirage.
Shema gone Yama Sabina, and no Kuno Yun is your mother.
Tarimbodana.
Tarim the
Chut sound.
And then Mazu the what then we don't want to Mijunum, Tondu, and could be when you don't want Mijunum is.
Aha.
Inside of it.
So then, similarly, that phenomena are like mirages. So a mirage, when one is in a desert, sand, and looks far away in the distance and sees water, but the water is not really there. Similarly, one begins to see that attractive things, the word attractive and the attractive thing is like a mirage, is an illusion. So one begins to see that phenomena are illusory or like a mirage. The du i metu the dadzin. Du metu gare.
Du metu da ngazu de cha du zi marbeda. De cha ge yidong wa ta ba na ji yidong wa mero da. Penju chotong wa na ji penju chu yi.
Ale.
Wo de na ji ma da ban du shi de ge nie bu no ka no ge se de sa de.
Okay. And then it says, here you destroy the demon's poisonous flower-tipped weapons. So here, we were just speaking of this poisonous flower-tipped weapon. So here, this attachment to things that are attractive. So the flower is something beautiful that is like a poison-tipped weapon. So having an attachment to something attractive is a negativity, is a grasping. So you destroy that grasping at the things that are attractive. This translator's note, we have things that we are attached to that we find attractive and things that we hate that we find unattractive. So here, it's the poison flower-tipped weapons are referring to these things that we grasp at as being attractive, but they're really poisonous flower. They really have poison on their tips, because so it's here we destroy that idea of grasping at attractive things.
Da cheda jabe ta yang me ban do se cheda jabe ta me ban do cheda jabe de jija ban so sha bi cheda go go re ka pe ji yin ji ro da kala ji den so nga da rani cheda che bu mes ante kala yue jin do ka ni lu na de le ma ro ji yue sa
ni shu guo ni
cheda de jabe yin na da ka su re da ban ji me tan jin lo su bu su cheda jabe mar be ji den so lo nga wa jo rani ki sheba sheba bishye meba cheju sonde ki cheda dai te mataba to gomba ina wa te ki te ba ina ko meba res.
And passed beyond the sight of the Lord of Death. Here, the Lord of Death is similar to the Lord of Death mentioned in the Aryadeva's 400 verses, where we find that the Lord of Death is referring to the karma and afflictions. By meditating on impermanence, we pass beyond the sight of the Lord of Death. We pass beyond these karma and afflictions by passing beyond the grasping at permanence. So we're passing beyond, by meditating on impermanence, we're passing beyond the grasping at permanence, and therefore passing beyond the sight of the Lord of Death, which is referring to the karma and afflictions that give rise to that experience of death.
Gawa tongshin neji do ngen dansa gawa tongshin gawa su nga su gebe chane de ro marbe gawa tongshin neji do ngen dan tebi ge nasa dan kensi ge nasa do ne do ngen do marbe sen dan jayu shiwa 산전제 시와 통내네 산전제 시와 통내네 댐비 전란다이 신분네 제된 배배 더분 뇌르게 시송소가 어떤 만다지 송도다
The Shena Sam Drogudu.
가와스나
Songkhandan Drapudu.
게부차도 all sabari
Lesso.
all sabari로 가와 통신 내지 동에다 delusion sabari 말베 내지 동에다
Sickness.
시 sabari베
Sickness.
시 sabari
Ne.
되네 세단테 쇼와스 세단테 시송나 세메버는
Drogudu.
세단테 쇼와 돈내는 세단테 쇼와 돈내는 댐비 줘라 다이 신분에서 세단테 쇼와 돈내 니부 돈내 마다고 고는 말베 돈내네 댐비 줘라 다이 신분데 댐비 추억상 댐비 되게 줘라 다이 구이 주신데 보네 진봉지사 제대 베베 본유르케스 제대 베베 더 본유르케스 제대 베바서 본토 말레스 데즈 추그상 데즈 토모여나 좀마도 본토 말레스 고지로다 야.
Okay, so then it says also, by seeing aging, so the suffering of aging, getting older, the suffering of sickness, so tuberculosis, cancer, various illnesses that one can acquire or can, various illnesses that one can have, and dead bodies from which the mind is gone. So here, once one dies, the dead body no longer has the mind. The mind has gone out of that body. It's a corpse. The resolute abandon this prison-like home. So recognizing, abandoning this prison-like home by applying an antidote or an opponent. So by applying an antidote, one can abandon a prison-like home. It says, while ordinary worldlings can never eliminate attachment. So those worldly beings never abandon attachment. They never apply an antidote. And so here it says, the resolute abandon. So those with a firm grasp on this, those who have this firm grasp on this understanding of impermanence and death. So those with who are resolute, who surely understand this, abandon this prison-like home. So they get rid of this by applying an antidote. They get rid of, by applying a strong antidote, they get rid of the karma and afflictions, whereas ordinary beings never eliminate such things. So that's the meaning of this stanza, the Dutsar.
와다든가서 마다바마고미 예미들 조지 뜻하지 마다바고 편을 송도와 송도 된저 차례 편송소바 다지 고선사 송바칸을 말이야.
So in the section on the downfalls of not cultivating mindfulness of death, we find that there are 6 points that are made about downfalls of not cultivating mindfulness. And then the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death, we find that there are 3 points that are made. Finding great meaning, or the meaningful. The second section, that it is the gateway to all excellent qualities, the gateway to all the excellences of the small, medium, and great scopes. And then dispelling or refuting lotugaba, sumba lotugaba, and refuting or misconceptions is the third. So we're into the second section, and then we have to deal with the third section. So we're dealing with the door or entrance into all the good qualities, and then still have to deal with dispelling misconceptions. So that is everything for today, and I want to thank you all for coming. And, everyone listened very well. Thank you very much. And, please familiarize. Please make strong aspirations or dedications now.
And go out the Lota the Hondu Juntu Maris.
The Shadzik got
Shadzik as Chushi she's a student. She was on the Shadzik was a man. To the Devamar was on ane goate sanji kuntu jungoba ina jasum chudi saba naji jasum gomba segmaris.
So if we dedicate the virtue appropriately, and we have the conditions of the virtue, the dedication, and the recognition of the lack of true establishment of the virtue itself, then it will not be extinguished until we achieve the state of enlightenment. So it needs to be dedicated towards complete Buddhahood, because by doing so, in a moment of negativity, won't destroy all the virtue that we've created. Thank you very much. And also, I'm going to, we now have the entire collected works of Panchen Sonandrapa at the center. So now we have the Kangjur, the authentic, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha. We have the Kangjur. We have the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. We have the Sumbum. We have Lama Tsongkhapa's complete collected works. Kirtup Jay's complete collected works. Jalsup Jay's complete collected works. And we now, because I'm going to leave them for the center, have Panchen Sonandrapa's entire collection. And Panchen Sonandrapa is the textbook writer for Drepung Losling Monastery. So, and also around the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, historically, or similar, after Lama Tsongkhapa. So the original textbook writer for Drepung Losling was Jayang Gapi Lodru. And then the Panchen Sonandrapa's works came out, and they changed over to Panchen Sonandrapa's texts because they were so wonderful. So we now have all of them. So it's we should rejoice in that too. It's a wonderful collection of texts that present the complete path without error or stain. So, thank you. Dedication, somewhere around here. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. The virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings, sentient beings, and in particular, essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denolem.